It was just after sunrise on September 9, 2022, when a frantic call to 911 came in from a sprawling estate in East Hampton, a voice thick with panic reporting that her husband, 58-year-old tech mogul Gregory Harwood, was unresponsive in the jacuzzi. What initially sounded like a tragic medical emergency would, in the weeks that followed, unravel into one of the most chilling cases of manipulation and murder that Suffolk County had seen in years. Gregory Harwood, once a media-shy millionaire and widowed philanthropist, had made his fortune by founding Synexon Technologies, a cloud infrastructure firm that was eventually acquired by Oracle for over $700 million. In the years following the death of his first wife, Diane, in 2019, Gregory retreated into a quieter life, dividing his time between his Hamptons property and philanthropic work in the arts and sciences. By all accounts, Gregory had been a thoughtful, slightly reclusive man who doted on his daughter, Emily, a clinical psychologist living in Boston. Friends later told investigators he wasn't the type to chase attention or fall for flattery easily, until he met Cassandra Bloom, a woman nearly 22 years his junior, at a charity gala in Manhattan in March of 2022. Cassandra, born Cassandra Bellamy in Raleigh, North Carolina, had reinvented herself more than once over the years, but when she entered Gregory's orbit, she was working as a gallerist, known for hosting lavish but sparsely attended art exhibitions in Chelsea. Witnesses described her as disarmingly charming, always perfectly put together, with a cultivated air of Southern grace masking a deeply assertive nature. She had a knack for zeroing in on her target in a room. A server at that very gala would later recall how Cassandra seemed to shadow Gregory all night, laughing too loudly at his jokes, touching his arm, keeping him close. Within a matter of weeks, she was staying at his estate on the weekends. By late May, she had moved in full time. Friends were surprised by the speed of the romance, but Gregory's daughter Emily was disturbed by it. She would later tell detectives she immediately sensed something performative and transactional about Cassandra's affection, a suspicion that only intensified when Cassandra began subtly nudging Gregory to update his estate planning. It would come out later through the Harwood family's attorney that Gregory had originally intended to leave 85% of his estate in trust to Emily, but by August 2022, just 6 weeks after Gregory and Cassandra's impulsive wedding in Tuscany, an intimate affair attended only by 4 friends and no family, that will was rewritten. On August 22, Gregory met with his attorney to draft a revised version, now leaving 60% of his estate to Cassandra outright, including the house, the vehicles, and a significant portion of his offshore holdings. He also named her as his primary medical power of attorney. The new will was signed and notarized on August 31. It would be the last major legal document Gregory Harwood would ever sign. In hindsight, several of Gregory's friends noticed subtle changes in his demeanor during those final weeks. His longtime personal trainer recalled that Gregory had complained of intermittent dizziness and fatigue, blaming stress and dehydration. His estate manager found him pacing the garden alone late one night, muttering about not feeling right lately. But the most chilling warning signs came from what wasn't said. Gregory never told his daughter about the changes to the will, and when she visited the weekend before his death, she told authorities he seemed distracted, even evasive, when asked how things were going with Cassandra. She left on Sunday night. 5 days later, her father would be found dead in the very jacuzzi where, according to Cassandra, he often unwound with a glass of wine and a podcast. But the circumstances of his death, and the timing, would soon cast a long, dark shadow over Cassandra Bloom, whose past, once it began to unravel, revealed a pattern far more sinister than anyone close to Gregory had imagined. Her name had appeared before, in court records, in coroner reports, in settlements, but always behind a different veil, always with a man who ended up either bankrupt, missing, or dead. And the more investigators pulled at the threads of Cassandra Bloom's past, the more the image of a grieving young widow would give way to something far colder and infinitely more calculated. On the morning of September 9, 2022, Cassandra Bloom answered the door in a bathrobe, her hair still damp, as East Hampton paramedics rushed into the Harwood Estates garden terrace and found Gregory's lifeless body face down in the bubbling water of the jacuzzi. Cassandra claimed she had woken up around 7:30 a.m. and discovered the spa still running, only to find Gregory unresponsive when she went to check. She told first responders that he had stayed outside later than usual the night before, saying he wanted some time to himself after a tense phone call with his daughter. She reported going to bed early with a migraine and assumed he'd joined her in the night. The paramedics noted that the water temperature was unusually high, 104 degrees Fahrenheit, and that Gregory's body exhibited early signs of rigor mortis. The working assumption was that he had drowned sometime between 10:30 p.m. and midnight. The first impression supported Cassandra's version. There were no signs of a break-in, no visible wounds, no overturned furniture, nothing to suggest a struggle. A bottle of red wine and an empty glass rested on the nearby table. It appeared to be a tragic accident, perhaps a cardiac event while relaxing, aggravated by alcohol or the heat. Cassandra was calm, even cooperative in her initial interview, but officers noted that she did not ask if Gregory had suffered. She did, however, ask how long it would take to obtain a copy of the death certificate. The Suffolk County Medical Examiner conducted an autopsy within 48 hours. The cause of death was listed as drowning, but with a curious footnote: low traces of lorazepam, a prescription anti-anxiety medication, were detected in Gregory's system. Not enough to kill him, but enough to induce drowsiness and slowed reaction time. Gregory was not known to be on any such medication. His regular physician confirmed he had no active prescriptions for lorazepam or similar sedatives. Cassandra, when asked, claimed Gregory sometimes took her pills to help him sleep, though no such pills were found in the master suite, and her prescription bottles showed no refill activity in over 2 months. Still, the initial determination leaned toward accidental drowning, exacerbated by possible intoxication and pre-existing heart issues. But Emily Harwood wasn't convinced. She told detectives that her father had never even liked hot tubs, let alone used them late at night, and had complained to her on multiple occasions that the spa gave him headaches. More importantly, she revealed that she had only just learned of the new will, signed a mere 9 days before her father's death, and she believed Cassandra had manipulated him into changing it. Her suspicions gained traction when Cassandra attempted to list the East Hampton home for sale less than a week after Gregory's funeral. A closer review of security camera footage from the property's garage revealed a crack in Cassandra's story. At 10:43 p.m. on the night of Gregory's death, Cassandra was captured walking through the side entrance of the garage in what appeared to be a silk robe and slippers, heading toward the garden rather than the bedroom, as she had claimed. When confronted with the footage, she said she had simply gone to retrieve her phone, which she left on a patio table. But detectives grew increasingly suspicious. Neighbors, interviewed in the days that followed, recalled hearing raised voices and what sounded like a woman yelling sometime around 10:15 p.m., though no official noise complaint had been filed. As investigators began to examine Cassandra's background more deeply, they discovered a pattern both eerie and compelling. A Freedom of Information request in Riverside County, California, unearthed the 2017 autopsy report of Jordan Bloom, Cassandra's second husband, who had died under strikingly similar circumstances, found unresponsive in a pool, presumed to have drowned after consuming alcohol and a muscle relaxant. No foul play had been suspected at the time, but he had left behind a sizable life insurance policy, of which Cassandra had been the sole beneficiary. She had received $1.2 million. Prior to Jordan, Cassandra had been briefly married to a man named David Reese in Asheville, North Carolina, in 2012, a union that ended within a year amid allegations of financial coercion. Court documents from that divorce revealed David's claims that Cassandra had drained joint accounts and opened credit cards in his name. More alarming was a 2015 restraining order filed in Manhattan by Nathan Drew, a former boyfriend and financial consultant, who accused Cassandra, then using the name Cassie Bellamy, of repeated threats and predatory behavior targeting men of wealth. Though the restraining order was dismissed for lack of corroborating evidence, it added another unsettling layer to her history. These discoveries turned what was first seen as an unfortunate accident into a probable pattern, one laced with escalating consequences. Investigators grew increasingly convinced that Gregory Harwood's death was neither an accident nor inevitable, but orchestrated, calculated down to the dosage of a sedative and the timing of a revised will. By mid-October, the puzzle pieces had shifted. And Cassandra Bloom, once the grieving new widow in cashmere and pearls, was becoming something far more chilling, a woman whose husbands had a tendency to die in water, and whose stories, when examined closely, all began to blur together in ways that no longer looked like coincidence. By late October 2022, the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office had quietly assembled a task force dedicated to reviewing every aspect of Gregory Harwood's death, alongside Cassandra Bloom's increasingly damning history. While no single detail could conclusively prove murder, the growing mountain of circumstantial evidence painted a disturbing picture of pattern, opportunity, and motive. Forensic analysts re-examined data from Gregory's iPhone and smartwatch, uncovering that the device recorded elevated heart rate activity and then a sudden, sharp drop around 11:02 p.m. on the night of his death, within the exact time frame when Cassandra was seen on surveillance walking through the garden. More telling was the discovery, via subpoenaed Apple Health data, that Cassandra's phone showed movement between 10:28 p.m. and 11:15 p.m., contradicting her claim of having been asleep since 9:30. Her phone had also searched for terms including, "How long does lorazepam stay in the system?" and "How to speed up probate," in the days following Gregory's death. On October 17th, Cassandra was arrested at a boutique hotel in Soho, where she was allegedly meeting with a probate attorney to begin liquidating more of Gregory's assets. She was charged with second-degree murder, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, and manipulation through fraudulent inducement. At her arraignment, she appeared composed, dressed in muted gray, speaking only to confirm her name. Prosecutors laid out their theory in a tightly constructed narrative. Cassandra had administered lorazepam to Gregory, possibly slipping it into his wine, knowing it would impair his coordination, especially in the heated spa. Once he was sedated and disoriented, they alleged, she either forcibly held him underwater or let him slip beneath the surface, knowing his pre-existing arrhythmia would increase the risk of cardiac arrest. The jacuzzi, they argued, wasn't incidental, it was instrumental. Its high temperature and turbulent water would not only hasten death but mask any physical signs of struggle. The defense team countered that there was no physical evidence of foul play, no bruising or contusions, and pointed to Gregory's known heart issues as the likelier culprit. Cassandra's lead attorney painted her as a misunderstood, grieving widow targeted because of her past relationships, and insisted that she had never been criminally charged in connection to any of her former partners. The trial began on March 6, 2023, at the Suffolk County Supreme Court in Riverhead, drawing widespread media attention and sparking online discourse about financial abuse, coercive control, and the challenges of prosecuting so-called quiet homicides. The state's case hinged not on a smoking gun, but on a mosaic of behavioral inconsistencies, digital breadcrumbs, and Cassandra's own contradictions. Emily Harwood delivered powerful testimony, recounting how her father had become withdrawn and secretive in the final weeks of his life and how Cassandra had sought to isolate him from family. Forensic experts explained how the temperature and aeration of the spa could interfere with the presentation of asphyxia markers, especially in elderly individuals with cardiac vulnerability. The most damning moment came when prosecutors played Ring doorbell footage, obtained from a neighboring estate, that captured Cassandra, glass of wine in hand, stepping calmly back into the house at 11:07 p.m., with no sign of urgency or distress. The jury deliberated for just under 3 days. On March 28, 2023, Cassandra Bloom was found guilty of second-degree murder and financial exploitation. She remained stone-faced as the verdict was read, though observers noted her hands trembled slightly. On May 15, she was sentenced to 30 years to life in Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, the judge describing her actions as deliberate, cold, and rooted in entitlement. Emily Harwood was granted temporary conservatorship over the estate, though a probate battle is still pending. The case ignited national conversations about the legal blind spots around intimate partner homicide when the method leaves little forensic trace. The prosecution would later state that the case could never have been made without the combination of digital forensics, witness credibility, and Cassandra's history catching up with her. In interviews following the trial, Emily said she no longer saw Cassandra as a person, but as a mirror for every weakness my father had, a man who wanted love, but didn't know when it had become a weapon. For many, the Harwood case became a cautionary tale about vulnerability wrapped in wealth, the illusions of charm, and the ways predators can operate in plain sight, striking not with a gun or a knife, but with silence, heat, and patience.